Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Pei, and I want to welcome you to our discussion about updating the fall calendar. I am the director of the First Year Center, and tonight I am joined by my colleagues and senior leadership from the Division of Student Affairs in the College of Arts and Sciences, and my colleagues will introduce themselves shortly. We are very excited that you have chosen to join us for tonight's conversation, but a little bit of information before we get started. First is my weather warning. We have a bit of a thunderstorm here in St. Louis, so if you hear a large banging sound, it's probably thunder and not my toddler, although maybe also the toddler. If we cut out a little bit or one of us just disappears, there are, I think, plenty of my colleagues on this call to be able to continue and move forward, but hopefully we will have a good Wi-Fi connection for the next hour with you all. And now I want to make sure that you know how to submit questions during this webinar. If you are logged in via Zoom, you will notice that we've given you the ability to ask questions via the Q&A feature. If you are watching this live stream through YouTube, I invite you to email your questions to families.worcester.edu. Let me start, families@worcester.edu. The dot there would take it to a website. So you can email your questions to families@worcester.edu, and one of my colleagues will put that information up on the screen, I think, in a minute for you as well. And then I wanted you to know you're going to probably see like a lot of shields on the screen with people that either say First Year Center or Student Affairs. Those folks are on the back end of this helping us to cull through those questions. And so if you are in the Q&A feature, again, you might see someone click dismiss on your question. We're going to answer that question on here. We're just moving them into a different screen that I'm reading from because it's a little hard for us as panelists to keep track of what's happening in that Q&A box. If you did submit your questions in advance by emailing them to either the families@worcester.edu account or to the First Year Center, please rest assured we already have those questions and are prepared to answer them on this webinar. We have received over 100 pre-submitted questions. We're going to do our best to answer as many of those and the ones that come live in the next hour, but we may not be able to get to all of them, unfortunately. And so if you have a more nuanced or personal question, we will email you the response to that next week. For the rest, we will do our best to update the FAQ on the university's COVID website quickly so that you can get those answers that I know are really important to you. So to make sure that the folks on Zoom know how to use that Q&A feature, I'm seeing a few people already started in there. I'm going to ask that for people to test that functionality, if you could just write in where you are watching this from, let us know where in the world you are, and we'll name a couple of those places on air. And then lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and so next week we will upload this webinar to the families.worcester.edu website, and you'll be able to view it there or maybe share with someone who wasn't able to join us live. So before I pass this along to our panelists, I want to share some of the places you all are joining us from. We have new students and families from Maryland, Maine, and California, so all across the United States. And now, since I know you really want to hear from my colleagues, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, beginning with Ms. Kawana Leggett. And then once those introductions are complete, Dr. Robert Wild and Dean Jen Smith will share some reflections on Chancellor Martin's announcement regarding the fall semester. So we'll begin with Kawana.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kawana Leggett, and I'm currently the Executive Director for Residential Life. And on Monday, I will assume the role of Interim Dean of Students. The Dean of Students portfolio includes working with amazing folks in the First Year Center, Campus Life, Student Conduct, and Residential Life.
Thank you. Dr. Kirk Dewar.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Kirk Dewar. I am the Associate Vice Chancellor of Student Support and Wellbeing. I oversee a number of areas, including Habith Medical, our pharmacy, our health promotion office, relationship and sexual violence prevention, Habith Mental Health, and also an entity we call WashU Cares.
Dr. Robert Wild.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Washington University family. Some of you may have met me already on some of our other new family webinars. It is good to have you with us again. Rob Wild, current Dean of Students. I pass the baton over to Kawana Leggett next Monday, and I will become the Interim Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, which basically means I am working with a large number of departments, programs, and people who will be serving your students in their lives outside of the classroom.
And Dean Jen Smith.
Hi, Jen Smith. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm here on behalf of my colleagues in the undergraduate academic divisions.
Rob and Jen, would you begin by sharing some reflections on Chancellor Martin's announcement regarding the fall semester?
I would be happy to start, and then I will pass things over to Dean Smith. So obviously in the last 24 hours, a lot has changed, and we are very excited that we were able to announce our not just our fall calendar, but our 2020-21 academic calendar for next year. As we have been saying all along, our goal as an institution has always been to figure out how this fall we can have a robust in-person experience for our students, both you as our new students and families, as well as our returning students. But this is hard work. We, for all of us, for all of you in your lives, none of us have ever experienced anything like this, what we're experiencing right now. And the challenge is, as you all know, because you are reading the same news outlets and same CDC guidance that we are, that there is no clear or obvious path to figuring out how to do what we do in the same way as we prepare for the fall. We have been working really since March to begin to figure out how we can reopen our campus in the fall. Dean Smith and I have been participating in a group that I'll give you a little bit of inside information on later or in a minute or so, that we call affectionately the Fall Contingency Planning Committee. Don't remember that because it's a mouthful. But really it's a group of senior leaders at the university who have been quickly and efficiently working to try to look at multiple scenarios for the reopening of campus and the possibilities as well as the associated risks with that. Our senior leadership team has been guided by many of our academic leaders, our own operations teams, as well as our very world-class faculty in the areas of public health and infectious disease. That's been one of the silver linings to this process, is to have the chance to work with some of those outstanding folks from our medical school and our Institute for Public Health. And as I said, I can tell you there's no clear path or obvious path forward for how to do this. You all have entrusted us with the care of your students. We take that very seriously. And so that's why we have developed the plans that we have developed. As you learned yesterday, we have decided that our plan at Washington University is to take a very cautious and deliberate approach to reopening our campus. In March, we closed our campus very quickly. Our plan now is to reopen slowly, carefully, thoughtfully, and that is what we are doing. We believe this plan gives us the best chance for success in the year ahead and will provide the best experience for all of your students. I'm going to mention a little bit about our planning process over the next month that we will be sharing more information about as it becomes available. But I wanted to talk about 3 specific areas that all of you are likely interested in. And one of the themes, unfortunately for us tonight, is that I can't answer exactly every question that you will have. I would like to, but I can't. But I'm going to mention a couple things. First, I'm going to start with orientation. We have an outstanding orientation team here at Washington University. Catherine Pei, who you've heard from, is the leader of those programs, and she is leading us through this unique orientation season. We are going to be having an orientation program. It's called Bare Beginnings here at Washington University. It is going to be a mix of virtual experiences for your students and for you that will begin this summer, and it will culminate with in-person experiences that will happen for your students in the 3 or 4 days leading up to the start of classes on September 14th. I cannot tell you the move-in date. I would not make plans the week of September 7th because that is when it is going to be. It is likely, although not decided yet, that we are going to do a staggered move-in to make it safer so that we don't have everybody come in the same 3 to 6 hour window, but that we spread it out over a few days. We will be sharing more information about that soon. We are working on our housing assignments. Kawana will be talking about that likely on this call, but we will finalize our housing assignments by August 1st this year so that students have plenty of time to meet their new roommates before they arrive. And then the last thing I wanted to mention before I talk about fall planning is for our international families. We know we need to provide some dates so that we can begin completing the I-20 paperwork and get your travel underway. We are working very quickly now that we know the September 14th date, and we expect to be able to have that process underway by the end of next week, if not sooner than that. So stay tuned. If you haven't already connected with our Office of International Students and Scholars, that's the team that's going to be working closely with you as our international families. Okay, so talking about our planning for the fall, we are over the next 4 weeks going to be deeply engaged in the next very intense planning process for the fall. And we've centered our planning around 4 areas. I'm going to quickly talk about 3 and let Dean Smith talk about the 4th. The first planning area is around housing and dining. This is in some ways the most challenging and most important part of our planning process for the fall. How do we create living environments for our students where we are minimizing the spread of coronavirus? As I've said in other audiences, it is not a matter of if we will have a coronavirus situation on our campus. It's a matter of when, and we want to be as prepared as we can be for that. How students are fed, just like how you all are experiencing your trips to the grocery store and the trips to get takeout. We are having to modify our own dining service here to be able to serve the great food that we have become known for to all of our students, our faculty, and our staff. And those plans already are pretty far along, and we will be finalizing them in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So housing and dining is the first group. The second group that Dr. Dewar may speak about on this call is around monitoring and containment. We will need to be ready with adequate testing for students, faculty, and staff, as well as the ability for students to provide quarantine housing and in some cases isolation housing in the event that students contract coronavirus. And so that group is working already and will continue to work. And then the third group that I'll mention is around Danforth campus programs and events. We have lots of activities and student groups that we expect to be back in action this fall. Life will be different. Our ability to gather as freely in groups of large sizes is something that happens on all campuses, whether it's at a sporting event or a theater production, will be different. But we know if we're going to have a residential experience, we want our student groups to be able to engage with one another. And so basically what we're doing is we're planning on some ground rules for how that will work. And we're engaging in this particular group with many of our returning students. In fact, they've already been talking with us, and I'm proud of them because in some ways our students are steps ahead of us in terms of their thinking about how they can still have the activities that they love and do it in a way that is safe. So the most important, I think, of these 4 groups is the academic programs group that Dean Smith has already been working with. And so I want to let her have a little airtime to talk about that.
Thanks so much, Rob. So yes, we have another working group for fall planning, recently renamed Educational Mission, because it focuses on how we deliver the world-class, personal, and engaging educational experience that we're incredibly proud of. So that group is working across a number of areas, and one of those is applying the same public health guidelines to keep our students and our faculty and our staff, our whole community safe to our classes. And so, adjusting the capacity in our classrooms, thinking about extending the passing time between our classes so that students don't have to crowd to get into or out of some of the classrooms. How will we offer our lab classes in the appropriately socially distanced way? So some of it is very operations focused and looking at how we're using space and scheduling classes. So that's similar. And then more particular academic engagement. So we're looking a lot at how we are supporting and training and providing guidelines for our faculty to redesign their classes for the fall so that they will allow for students to participate both in person and remotely, so that we have a lot of flexibility in how we're offering our classes, so that if there are students who can't make it to St. Louis or who are immunocompromised, that they will have an alternative to in-person engagement, and that will be remote. And so designing a course that works well simultaneously with students in the classroom and students participating from wherever they are requires technology, and it requires expertise. And so we're spending a lot of time this summer taking some of what we learned from our less planned pivot to remote instruction in the spring, but using that to create better and consistent experiences for our students over the course of the fall semester. So a big focus of that group is faculty support and training over the course of the summer. And then we're also looking at technology, both within our classrooms to permit that remote engagement for our students, because what we love so much, what we as faculty love so much about teaching is that interaction with our students and their interaction with their peers in the classroom. And so a huge focus for us is how to support that kind of interactive experience regardless of where students are connecting to their class from, be it in person on campus or remotely. And so building that all now and making sure all the technology is there, both in our classrooms and for our individual students, so that our students all have the technology they need to participate fully in these experiences, will allow us to be immensely flexible over the course of the fall semester. If a student does have to be in quarantine or isolated for some time, they can switch over to the remote engagement form of the classes that they're in. So we're putting a lot of thought and effort into designing our curriculum for the fall to allow for students to participate in the way that is healthiest and really works best for them. And then we have a whole group really thinking about what are the opportunities presented? You know, this is an incredible, unprecedented time in world history. And so how are we making sure that our students have the opportunity to engage? You know, we have some new classes. Our anthropology department is teaching on the anthropology of COVID-19 or life in crisis. How do societies respond to major crises? How are we creating and maximizing the educational opportunities that such a historic time presents, and using the remote possibilities to have more people coming in and participating and giving guest lectures. So how are we not just delivering the educational experience we're known for, but making sure that we are rising to the opportunity of this time to make our educational experience even better. So I know one piece of the academic calendar that has caused people a lot of questions is around our final exams, which at this point, given the September 14th start date, we have a set number of weeks in a semester for our accreditation. That sets, you know, number of hours per week, credit hours per week over number of weeks per semester that we need to deliver a degree that meets all the criteria for our accreditation as a university. And so with the September 14th start date, we need 15 weeks of instruction, and that kicks our final week of the semester, which is our final exam period, to be after January 1st. And so a couple pieces of that, not all of our classes hold final exams during final exam periods. Some have projects or papers. Some simply offer multiple midterm exams on different sections of the class. And so that exam may be in the last week of classes. And so not every course will have something during that final exam period. We are also planning for whatever happens during that final exam period after January 1st to happen remotely. So students will be able to, when they're done with classes, go home. I believe December 18th is the last scheduled day of instruction, and they will be able to participate remotely in final exams, and then until classes will start up on January 25th for the spring semester. So students will be able to have more than a month while they're not on campus participating just in those final exams. So this is a little bit new for us to have final exams after break. but it's not by any means something that never happens anywhere. When I was an undergrad, all my final exams happened after winter break. And so I understand completely the downsides of that, because it's in the back of your mind over break. But I promise you, more often than not, it's that you haul all of your textbooks with you and you don't actually open them until the couple days before final exam periods. Not that I would advocate that process, but that's often what happens. And it's okay. Don't stress out about it. It gives us a way even to take a breath, regroup, rethink, and a lot of the work that you've done over the semester will settle into your brain while you're not thinking about it. For real, there's cognitive science behind that. I'm not making that up. And you'll be in good shape for those exams in whatever classes are actually holding final exams during that final exam period. So again, I know that's a piece that is causing some stress for people, but I want to reassure you, the academic support will be there for you, and we're ready to work with you. And we're just so excited for students to be on campus. We have missed you all so much. Well, not you necessarily. We're excited for you to join us. We want our students back, and we're incredibly excited for that to happen, and willing to do whatever we need to do to make that happen safely, so that we can keep you with us on campus.
Rob and Jen, thank you so much for that. In the past week or so, we've seen several universities across the United States announce their fall plans, and many of them are starting earlier in August than maybe their typical semester would. They're ending by Thanksgiving. WashU has obviously taken a different route. Rob, maybe you specifically, can you talk about the decision to start the semester later than usual and bring back students after Thanksgiving?
Yep. We have gotten a few questions about that. And again, want to highlight what I said earlier. Our strategy has been careful and deliberate. And what that means is we want to gradually reopen. For us, almost all of our faculty and staff have been off campus since March. You can see I'm sitting here in my basement at my house. I've been to campus 2 times. Since March. And effectively, students or faculty and staff won't be returning until August at this point. We've canceled all summer programs on campus through August 1st. And so our gradual reopening will begin in August in earnest, as we begin to repopulate some of our offices and labs and spaces on campus. We made the decision to allow 2 groups of professional students, our law students and our social work students and public health students in the Brown School of Social Work, to return on August 24th for classes as scheduled. Part of the reason for that is that they are not living on campus, so we don't have to manage the challenge that the residence halls present. But part of the reason, honestly, is that we want to ease into instruction and see what we can learn from that first group, so that we can be better when the large number of undergraduates return to campus on September 14th. There is, as I said earlier too, there is no clear path. The models nationally, regionally, for where a second peak will occur are all over the place. In St. Louis, for example, one model shows a resurgence in St. Louis in late July and early August, related to the timing of when the state of Missouri began to reopen. And I promised I wouldn't do this, but I have to comment on the Ozarks party that happened over the weekend that made its way all over the national news media, which is about 120 miles from St. Louis, but still distressing to all of us in St. Louis who've been staying home and doing our best to try to be safe, so that we can open our businesses and our higher education institutions. So all this to say, we believe that extra time will allow us to be safer, stronger, better. We know that this is the right decision for us, because we believe it gives us the best chance for success. Our goal is to have an in-person experience for all of those 15 weeks that Jen mentioned, and we're going to continue to try to work towards that.
Thank you, Rob. Seeing lots of questions about orientation and when students need to move in. So I'm going to break my rule as the moderator and answer the questions about orientation since they fall under my department. So as Rob mentioned, we are re-envisioning what orientation looks like at WashU. So typically our Bare Beginnings is in person in August. We will continue to have an orientation program called Bare Beginnings, but it's going to be 3 phases, and one actually starts next week. So for all the new students who are in Wiser, you can go in there right now and look up about Bare Beginnings, our summer engagement series. It's several offerings of some Zoom meetings and webinars and discussion boards to join students in a community that you're affiliated with. So there are spaces for students of color. There are spaces for students who practice certain religious and spiritual faiths. There are spaces for students in some of our named scholar programs like Irvin, Rodriguez, Danforth, Langsdorff, CMML. There's a space for our students who are in our Deneb Stars program. And so we're starting that actually next week. Then the beginning of August, we're going to launch Bare Beginnings Get Your Bearings. If you can't tell, we really like bear puns. And for Get Your Bearings, it's going to be an online orientation where you're going to learn some of the information we would typically do in person in Bare Beginnings, but that often for us was in a lecture hall or a large venue with 600 people. Jen Smith, for example, would normally give a little curriculum lecture to groups of 600 arts and sciences students at the same time. We don't think that's going to be a good plan in September. And so we're going to put that information in the Get Your Bearings that's happening in August. And then Bare Beginnings Fall Welcome will be our in-person experience in September. And so the in-person experience will be in September. I know that there was originally a move-in date for August. That is no longer the case. I'm going to make sure that that new student's website is updated, hopefully tomorrow, to indicate that. But so my first real question for one of the panelists is for you, Kawana. Could you share a little bit more about when families and students could learn more about move-in, and what are some of the considerations that we're looking at this year for move-in, and how it's going to differ than in the past in order to ensure that it's a safe experience for everyone?
Yes, I think the biggest consideration is really looking at what our public health guidelines will be. Now that we have our September 14th date, we really have the opportunity to back in and build what our move-in experience will be. As Rob indicated earlier, we're looking at a staggered move-in that practices great social distancing, and it's also dependent on what our occupancy looks like. And so these conversations go hand in hand. We have many fall planning contingency groups coming together to talk about what the density of our housing portfolio will look like. And so as we think through those things, we're also looking at what move-in will look like. What I can guarantee is that we will ensure that public health takes precedent over everything in terms of how we bring our students back into the residential facilities. I will also echo what Rob said. September 7th, that week, is looking more and more like the opportunity for us to have our students return. We will have guidelines in place. And so as we think about the move-in experience, it may not look as it has in the past, where we have a group of student leaders who are merged on your car to help you move in. We've got to think about what those guidelines will look like, but we will make sure that it's a positive move-in experience once we get those dates together. And just to give you a little bit of assurance that we're planning in a timely manner. We have meetings scheduled tomorrow and next week with our doctors who are going to advise us when those best dates are. We're trying to get our dates together because, as Rob indicated, we have international students who are need to have clear guidelines of when they can come back. So I'm hopeful in the next couple of weeks we'll have more clear, definitive dates around when move-in will be.
Thank you so much, Kawana. Kirk, I have a very specific question for you, but that we've seen many, many times. Do we think that students will need to self-quarantine for their first 14 days after they return to campus in the fall, in September, or if they were to travel later in the semester, maybe around Thanksgiving? What might that process look like?
Yeah, thank you. So for the quarantining piece, it's not anticipated at this point that students are going to need to self-quarantine upon arrival. So right now, what is called community transmission, where it's like when you get a cold, you sometimes have some idea where you got it from, other times not so much. When that starts to happen with regard to viruses, it often eliminates the need to try and figure out where people are coming from. However, if there were a huge second wave located in a particular city, then there might be some additional complications that come out of that. But until we have something identified like that, right now it's not seen as a viable option to be able to have students quarantine as they come to campus. However, additionally, we're also looking at different options on how we might be able to make sure that we're screening students appropriately, helping them to be able to make sure that they understand clear practices. It is very likely, in fact, almost predetermined, that we will have a number of different stipulations, as Kawana indicated, that students be wearing masks while they're on campus, that they're socially distanced, all the same kinds of things that you would recognize from your state and local county health recommendations. As we look to the guidance that have been stood up in a number of documents from the American College Health Association and the CDC specifically around campus situations, what we're seeing is very consistent recommendations on how we're able to do that. So while we don't anticipate quarantining, we're in hope that we might be able to have some testing processes put in place that would allow us to be able to make sure that we are testing our students who become symptomatic and that we are looking at other options. So over the course of the last few days, we've noted that what we were very hopeful about with regard to serology tests that look at the antibodies present in somebody that may indicate that they've already had it, we're seeing some false positives and false negatives coming out of that, and also the scope of what those tests look like is too broad. And so essentially what we'd hope to be able to do with students is run them through some of those tests to be able to figure out how we create the social distancing policy and public health policies. But that's not currently a feasible option. One of the other advantages, to speak to what Dr. Wild mentioned, is that as these scientific innovations and public health policies become more clear with time, starting in September gives us the opportunity, in fact, the greatest opportunity, to be able to have those things be as clear as possible before we bring students back on campus.
Thank you. Jen, a question for you. You know, now the semester is being pushed back. Many of our incoming students maybe were going to do something this summer like travel or work at a summer camp or you know, have an internship, do shadowing for someone to learn about a potential career. A lot of those opportunities have dissolved in COVID. So since the semester's not starting until September now, what academic opportunities do we offer at WashU over the summer that a student might be able to engage in?
Right, so we do have, we're running summer classes, and a lot of those are the foundational classes that you could take to explore different areas or get a start. So there's certainly the opportunity to get a taste of what WashU classes are like, and those are being offered for the summer in a fully remote manner because we're still working from home. And so we have a program specifically for our incoming first-year students called Summer Start, that does include some community building, getting to know each other. That would be an awesome way to make connections, not just take classes, but starting to meet some other students. And another piece of what, since we now have a little bit of extra time, so our summer classes normally would have ended August 15th in time for there to be another week before our fall classes started, but now we've got a couple of weeks. So part of what our group that is charged with innovation and creating new educational opportunities, we've asked them to think about those couple of weeks towards the end of August and early September to think about some mechanisms for students to engage in exploration, in connection, intellectually, that we're in the process of designing and standing up. So stay tuned. There will be additional opportunities to get connected with our faculty, with other WashU students that'll show up later on in the summer.
Thanks, Jen. Kirk, another question for you. You know, there's a lot of recommendations about people wearing face coverings, using hand sanitizer. Does the university have a plan in place to obtain sufficient obtain sufficient cleaning supplies and PPE, given that it's a little hard for some of us to find those in, you know, our grocery store, Walmart, Target?
Yeah, great question. So we are working hand in hand with the wonderful and quite world-renowned WashU School of Medicine. And in conjunction with them and our emergency management team, we've got great resources to be able to tap into for procurement, for specifically for PPE. So some of the concerns that we've had historically about obtaining PPE have reduced in their significance, and we've been able to develop several better pipelines to be able to acquire that. So at this point, we're from our emergency management folks and from our School of Medicine, we're not hearing the concern about being able to obtain enough hand sanitizer and masks and other kinds of things. Some of the more medically oriented PPE is still a little bit more difficult to come by, but they're finding resources to be able to acquire that as well. So with the nice response from St. Louis and having the curve be flattened, some of those resources and storehouses haven't been as depleted as we had anticipated they might be, which again bodes well for the opportunity to continue to plan for students' return.
Thank you. Kawana, you know, a lot of families look forward to in their first year coming to campus for Parent and Family Weekend. Can you share a little bit about what our plans are around Parent and Family Weekend?
Certainly. One of the best parts of WashU is our involvement with partnering with our parents and making them feel like they're a part of the community. And so know that while we will need to reimagine Parent and Family Weekend and may not have the traditional experience that we've always had as we are looking at potentially looking at what the future looks like. But I can say right now, we probably won't have Parent and Family Weekend as it's set up. We are working on building a robust virtual experience for our Parent and Family Weekend. And Catherine and her team will continue to do an amazing job, even if it won't be on site.
Thank you. Rob, can you share a little bit about what the plan is for the spring 2021 semester and those calendar dates?
Yep, great question. This was not as prominent in the announcement yesterday, but the spring dates are basically slightly shifted back. We are having a spring break in the spring, but the start date is January 25th, Monday, and we will end the second week of May. Again, so much is going to change between now and spring about what we know about public health recommendations and all the various changes that will happen in our own community and around the country. But for now, our faculty, our team in student affairs, the university is planning the full academic year with a slightly longer extended winter break period.
And Jen, how will that January 25th start date for the second semester align or space out from the finals that are happening to wrap up the end of the first semester?
So there should be about 2 weeks. The finals should end around January 8th, Friday, January 8th, and then 2 full weeks plus weekend before classes get going on Monday the 25th.
Rob or Kawana, for either of you, you know, we know that the academic experience is why people come to WashU, right? To get their degree first, but there's also a really important co-curricular experience that aligns with that, right? Being able to have a student work job, doing research in a lab, studying abroad someday, hopefully, participating in some of our great student organizations, maybe like an a cappella group or one of our intramural sports or a fraternity or sorority. What is that looking like, our co-curricular experience as we think about the fall?
I'll let Rob take that question, but I will say our current students have been actively engaged since they left campus. We've met with many of our student groups who are actively looking at how they can continue to come back and build wonderful experiences. So know that while the students went home, they continue to gather, congregate, and really communicate what does WashU look like for the future. So I'm excited about the student leaders that are coming back, the amazing student union representatives. You'll learn more about our CS40 and our residential experience and the leadership there. So it's an exciting time to be at WashU and be a student. And so I know that you're going to have a different experience, but you're going to get that student leadership and those opportunities to engage with others and meet other community members. It may just look a bit different.
All I would add to that, I had the good fortune of being on a call with our student leaders yesterday. At Washington University, our undergraduate student government is called Student Union, which I know for many campuses is a building, but here that's our student government. And I would say the mood among that team was elation. They were very relieved that we were coming back in person and that we wanted them back on campus. And they immediately on the call I was on began suggesting how they were going to develop events and support student groups in a different way. So, you know, the a cappella groups is an example that we've talked about in the past. We have a great a cappella community with many different groups on campus. All of those will be here. In fact, many of them have been performing on these crazy Zoom capellas or whatever you call them that you've seen on Facebook and other places over the last few months. But they will be back in person, and they're already thinking about do we need to do practice differently? Do we need to do our recruitment differently? Do we need to do our concerts differently? And so, as Kawana and Catherine both said, one of the key decisions about having students back involves the fact that they're not just going to come back and be locked in their room and go to class. We know that they're going to, and we want them to experience many of the things that Washington University has become known for. It's just going to be different for the fall. As I know, we will have all of you for 4 years. This is going to be a different start, but over 4 years, we're going to be back to the type of Washington University experience that we've become known for all of your students.
Thanks. A little understanding of WashU's vernacular. Student Union is our Student Government Association, and CS40 is our Residence Hall Association. So we use a little bit different names in some of our institutions. Kawana, a couple of housing questions for you. First, for our incoming transfer students who do not have guaranteed housing the same way that a first-year student does, what support services does the university provide them in finding housing? So again, all of our first-year students are guaranteed housing on campus. Our transfer students, unfortunately, aren't always able to be guaranteed that as well. So what can we do for them?
So we don't require our transfer students to live on campus like we do our first year students, but we do work closely with the missions and have a small group of transfer students that do live in our residential communities. It may not be on campus, but it is a part of our residential life portfolio. So we'll work closely with our transfer students. We have a good size group of, it varies each year from 30 to 50 students. Those students that are unable to get residential life housing, we actually work closely with our partners in quadrangle housing. We have a position in residential life, which is the assistant director for undergraduate student life, that for off-campus students that will work closely with any student to direct them to private properties that we know to be positive experiences for people in housing. So contact residential life and we'll walk through how we can best support you, be it within residential life housing or off campus in private properties.
And then a second housing question for you, Kawana. A lot of our housing is currently set up that students either share a common bathroom with many people on the floor or would be in a double or a triple. What considerations are you all making in the fall as more public health guidance becomes available about our living spaces?
So as we discussed earlier, there are many planning groups, and one of the most important groups is the housing group that will be working with public health officials and many representatives across the campus to make recommendations around what housing density will look like. And so there's various scenario planning that includes continued housing as we've done in many ways, or to look at the reduction of our occupancy. No decisions have been made just yet as we're really looking for the guidance of public health. We hope to be able to have a clear direction by July 31st to give more details about what our occupancy will look like. I will say that for our incoming students, traditionally, we have released housing assignments on July 1st, giving our new timeline for when the semester will begin. we have made the decision to release housing assignments on August 1st. That gives us a little bit more time to plan around our occupancy strategies, as well as in alignment with the new academic calendar. So students, incoming students can expect housing assignments to be released on August 1st.
Thank you. This next question is probably both for Jen and Kirk. What is WashU's plan to support students, faculty, staff who may have underlying health conditions that would put them at higher risk for COVID-19, particularly when thinking about their classroom experience?
So go ahead, Jen. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just say very quickly, I mean, part of the reason we're supporting our faculty to design these classes that will be offered in person and remote simultaneously is the idea that we will enable that academic experience to work well, either if a faculty member needs to be outside the classroom for their own health or safety, or if a student does. And so that's why we're working hard to make sure that underlying health conditions or concerns don't get in the way of a student's academic schedule or academic progress. And so we're focusing on having a good quality of potential for remote engagement for the very large majority of our classes.
And from a health standpoint, we're also looking to make sure that we're standing up processes and procedures that allow students and faculty to transition into one of those self-selected categories. And if I'm immunocompromised and I don't feel comfortable going to class, we want to be able to eliminate the barriers that would require a great deal of effort on their part to be able to obtain that accommodation. Rather, we want to make it easily accessible for them so that, one, people can select those, and two, it doesn't dissuade them or cause additional difficulty beyond what they're already struggling with.
Thank you. Rob, I have an athletics question for you that I'm not sure you can answer because I don't know that there is an answer. But we have so many new students who are excited to participate in varsity sports. What update do we have from our athletic conference about what that might look like?
Yep, great question. And to all of the parents of fall athletes or any athlete coming in, congratulations. We're very excited to get back to competitive bear sports here at WashU. So this is a question that is being widely discussed across all divisions of college athletics as those who are coming to WashU as an athlete family. You know that we're Division III. In the fall, we are a member of two different conferences. One is the University Athletic Association, which includes schools such as Emory, Rochester, NYU, Chicago, Brandeis, Case Western, Carnegie Mellon, as well as for football, something called the CCIW, which is a slightly more local and regional conference. We have been talking almost daily with all schools, and our athletic director here has been talking with all schools and leaders of those conferences. We are excited that we're continuing to make plans to have fall seasons for both of those conferences. We don't know yet if we're going to be required to make modifications around travel or perhaps play more local competition rather than more distant competition. We're not sure yet what we're going to be able to do around spectators and events on campus. One of the planning groups that I mentioned earlier, Anthony Azama, our Director of Athletics, is sitting on that to participate and understand what that looks like. But we did, all of our fall athletes received an email yesterday right after the message was sent from the Chancellor, just offering our commitment as of today that we're going to move forward with fall season. Now for our fall athletes, because that season will start before our academic calendar will start, we likely will need to work out some special situations regarding housing and food and meals for those athletes, a small orientation for them. We will have all that information by August 1st, along with our other planning timelines. And we will continue to monitor the guidance that's coming from the NCAA as well as our conferences.
Thanks, Rob. I have a couple more questions that I think might actually be you. Given that the calendar has been pushed back for the start of school date, has consideration been made about adjusting any of the tuition or fees specifically related to room and board?
Yes, great question. I will say, again, just on the tuition side, because we were able to adjust our academic calendar to be the same number of weeks that we would if we'd started on August 24th, we're not making any changes to the tuition. We are reviewing what this change has done to our housing dates, as well as the impact on how we calculate our dining plan rates. I can't tell you today if we're going to make adjustments to those, but we are going to finalize our decisions prior to the time when fall bills are due. So you will know about that then. I will also say quickly on some of our other fees, there is a orientation fee that you may have seen, as well as health and wellness fee. We're looking at those as well and trying to understand the impacts of these new dates on those. Obviously, any of the impacts would be a downward direction on those fees, which I think is important to know. And I do want to say, and I know all of you have been working with those of you who have been working with our financial aid team at WashU have received those awards already as part of your admission. I do want to underscore an important point that if my colleague Renee Turner and Mike Runowitz from the undergraduate admissions team were here, would say to all of you, these are very challenging times for all of our families. There's a lot of unemployment changes, the changes to companies and family financial status. I do want to just acknowledge and point out that if at any time, not just this fall, but during your 4 years at Washington University, something happens with your family that has changed your financial status, we want you to let us know. We want you to let us know right away. And our team is prepared to try to work with you in the event that does happen. We've been talking a lot about that and trying to prepare for those contingencies in this ever-changing economic landscape that we're experiencing right now.
Thank you. Kirk and Kawana, 2 questions. One, with all of these discussions about what may or may not be safe and plans to keep our community safe, do we think that there's a possibility campus would become closed to visitors?
So it's a good question and a complicated one as well. So right now, the public health wisdom is to reduce or eliminate any unnecessary contacts for students as much as possible. The more person-to-person exposures that we get, the higher the transmittability or the transmission that students are going to face. So right now, our intent for the foreseeable coming months is to be able to reduce all the visitors onto campus that we can. Going into fall, again, this gradual reopening, there may be some different guidelines in place depending on what's happening with how testing is going, with how the exposures and the new cases and a number of different things. But rest assured that we will keep, as the Chancellor continues to direct us, the priority being on the safety and security of our students. So we want to make sure that that's going to be the case. With regard to testing, I've seen a couple of questions asking about testing, and we are looking at different options on how we might be able to make those things happen and avail ourselves to getting students tested if they so choose, and if they are presenting with symptoms. So we're working on avenues to be able to make sure that that can happen, and if and when that does, one of the questions was about, will it be happening on campus? Will there be a site for that on campus? And the answer is yes.
And my only follow-up would be, we would continue to follow those public health guidelines as it relates to guests in the residential communities. And we would be very clear about setting that expectation. And we have live-in staff that would continue to support students, as I know that would be a challenge of saying you can't have guests. And so we will ensure that we clearly communicate what the expectations are, but we have to follow what the public health guidelines are.
And a follow-up question, if a student were to become sick, whether with COVID or something else, Kirk, could you first explain, what are our resources with Habit Health and Wellness for students who are sick? And then Kawana, what is being discussed about quarantine or isolation options within the residence hall?
So we are being very thoughtful in trying to develop different scenario plans for the fall with regard to sick visits, and in fact all visits to our medical services. So we are designing different ways to be able to engage the physical environment down there, to where we will have well visits coming in one entrance and other sick visits coming in a different entrance, and potentially some segregation with regard to respiratory ailments. So we're looking to be able to make sure that those visits to our Medical Center are safe for people that are coming in. For those that might come in contact with, be worried about, or be demonstrating COVID-consistent symptoms, we want to be able to make sure that we have a process in place, which we do already, given that the number of students that we anticipate on campus coming back, to be able to test them in a way that is feasible, to have the PPE that our providers are going to need, and then to be able to make sure that we have the ability to put them into quarantine or other kind of situations that will make sure that they are safe and the campus community is safe.
And I don't have too much to add, but I just will say that a part of the scenario planning is looking at how we acquire good isolation and quarantine spaces. And so that is a part of the planning experiences that we'll be doing over the next couple of weeks, because it will be important that if we do identify a case, that we have the proper guidelines in place to isolate and ensure that we have those housing beds separate from the other communities. And the challenge here, I will say the challenge here is in the spring, we typically have a few more vacancies where we have some luxury within the residential life portfolio. In the fall, we just don't have that. And so part of the scenario planning is looking at how we acquire more isolation and quarantine spaces. So more to come on that note.
Thank you. Rob, so many questions about Thanksgiving. Will students be able to travel home for Thanksgiving? Will the university require students to stay on campus? What thoughts are being developed around that? I think you're on mute.
Yep, I'm on mute, did that. Love when that happens on Zoom. So great question. We've been getting that question a lot. The answer is we don't know. We are going to make travel recommendations closer to those dates. I would not buy that Thanksgiving ticket just yet today at the end of May. I'm hoping that as we get closer to the start of the semester, we'll have a clearer sense about what the university might be asking around Thanksgiving travel. I had a parent message on the last call and say that she had spent so much quality time with her daughter over the last 2.5 months, and would be for the next 3 months, that she was fine with us keeping her for Thanksgiving. But in all seriousness, we know, especially for our first year families, this is a long time to be away, for students to be away from families. So we are going to do everything we can not to have travel restrictions, if that makes sense. It may be possible that we would have regional travel restrictions based on what the country landscape looks like, and the guidance that we're getting from the CDC and our own health department here. But we don't have that answer yet, and but when we do, we'll let you know.
Thanks, Rob. We are going to ask one last question for the evening. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to all of the questions. Families, we know there are literally 100 questions that we weren't able to answer yet, but we will build up the FAQ that's on the university's COVID site. And so one of my colleagues is going to put that site for you in the chat box. And please stay tuned next week for some more information. We are doing another webinar for families next week. You can find that information on the family's website. And so hopefully we'll be able to answer some additional questions live then. We are placing this recording online next week as well. And so if you'd like to review or would like to send to someone who couldn't join, please do so. So Rob, last question for you is, we've talked a lot about wanting to make sure that our students get connected to campus and our community really soon. Can you tell us what one of our next steps might be for connecting our first year students to some of our peer mentors?
Absolutely. We have a great program here of mostly sophomore students who we've selected and have come to us and asked to work with our new students. They are called WUSAs. I know that sounds weird. It's WUSA, Washington University Student Associates. Welcome to our world of acronyms here. But this is really a terrific and excited group of students who is going to be reaching out to all of your students next week to begin forming smaller communities to help get them acclimated, answer their questions, talk about study tips, and answering questions about life in the residence halls. These are all students who've experienced some time at Washington University, and will have lots of great advice and information for your students. Because sometimes your students like to ask questions of other students rather than us on this panel, because our students really know the real deal and how things work at WashU. I do want to say, again, as I said at the outset, how grateful we are that you all have chosen Washington University for next year. We are so excited to have your students with us. We know this is going to be a historic way to start with this great class of 2024 that's starting at Washington University. But we are looking forward to the next 4 years and getting to know you and our students. And I just, again, want to say thank you.
Panelists, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight and sharing the information you were able to about the university's plans for the fall. New students and families, to echo Rob's comments, we are just so excited to welcome you to our community. I work in the first year center. I've made my life's work working with new students and families because I think that it's the most exciting time for a student in their college career. And so while we weren't able to answer all of the questions tonight, and there's still a lot of, we're working on it and we don't know, we promise we are working on it and we will get you those answers as soon as possible. So as I said, we will place a recording of this webinar on families.worcester.edu. We will make sure that the university's COVID FAQs are updated with many of the questions that were asked tonight and those we couldn't get to. And if there's anything else that we can do to be of service to you all as you transition to our community, please reach out to us. The First Year Center can be reached at firstyearcenter@worcester.edu. You can go to the newstudents.worcester.edu site. You can go to the families.worcester.edu site, but we are here for you and just welcome to WashU, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall. Have a great evening.